Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to SFF180. Thomas here, your host as always. Thank you so much for joining me, and after, once again, a slight delay, I'm very, very sorry about that. It is finally time to check out the most anticipated fantasy releases for 2024. Now, the extra time that I have ended up putting into this list, I think, has been very good for the list. I've had to do some chopping and changing, a little bit of, shuffling some things. I had one very interesting deletion, which I might talk about a little bit later. It's a bizarre situation, but anyway, it had to happen. And and then I'm always very, very careful to vet these lists to filter out the rumored books from the confirmed books, right? So, for instance, a lot of people, lots of places online are saying the 5th Stormlight Archives book will be out at some point in 2024. Okay, great, fine, but until I get an actual announcement from Tor or a listing, at the very least, an Amazon listing or on some site, not Goodreads. Can never trust Goodreads, but something that I feel is pretty reliable. I'm not going to put it on the list. So, that's a rumored book. Maybe it'll come out. If it does, great. But I have, once again, a chunky list of 38 titles to get through. So without further ado, let's dig into 2024's anticipated fantasy releases. Starting this list with a release on January the 9th. This is The City of Stardust by Georgia Summers, coming out from Red Hook Publishing. A spellbinding contemporary fantasy, it says, about the Everleys, a family under a curse from a strange, ageless woman named Penelope, and about how the daughter's quest to find her missing mother and break the curse leads her into a seductive magical underworld of power-hungry scholars, fickle gods, and monsters bent on revenge. On the 23rd of January, we get From the Forest by Ellie Modesitt Jr. Now, this is the latest book in his saga of Recluse. It's the long-running, best-selling epic fantasy series, and in fact, this is the 23rd overall book in the series. But I understand that this one begins a new story arc, and so it's apparently okay for new readers to jump on. The main thing that you got to know about the Recluse world is that magic is divided into order and chaos, and this book follows the early life of a man known by many names, depending on who you ask: hero, tyrant, and emperor. So, if you've been curious about this series, this might be one to check out. Now, on February the 6th, we get one that I'm sure a lot of people will be very excited about. This is The Tainted Cup, and it is the first book by Robert Jackson Bennett to come out since the end of the Founders trilogy. And this one features a Holmes and Watson-style detective duo in a twisty fantasy murder mystery. Anna Delabra is the Empire's greatest detective, whose brilliance is matched only by her eccentricities. Rumor has it she wears a blindfold at all times and that she can solve impossible cases without even leaving her house. Her new assistant, Denios, I don't know. Anyway, this guy, Denios Call, I'll play it safe, read it phonetically, is magically altered in ways that make him the perfect aid to Anna's brilliance. Together they must solve the magical murder of a high imperial official. So that's The Tainted Cup on February the 6th. Now, the 13th of February is quite possibly the busiest day single day in all of the lists that I've put together. 5, count them, fantasy releases that day, starting with The Book of Doors. The author is Gareth Brown, and it says in this magical contemporary fantasy debut, Cassie Edwards leads an unassuming life working at a New York City bookshop, whose whole world changes when an elderly gentleman, one of her favorite customers, dies right in front of her. Devastated, she takes the book he was reading at the time, but it is no ordinary book. It is the Book of Doors. Inscribed with enigmatic words and mysterious drawings, it promises Cassie that any door is every door. You just need to know how to open them. And she soon learns that people with evil designs are searching for this book. And also, on the 13th, another book. This is the Book of Love. Now, Kelly Link is kind of like Ted Chiang. She's one of those very rare authors whose entire success and reputation rests on short fiction. And so this is her very long-awaited debut novel. And in The Book of Love, 3 missing teens are returned to life 1 year after their disappearance and deaths. And their unassuming high school music teacher seems to know something about why they disappeared and what brought them back. Agreeing to a series of magical tasks in order to return to their families and friends, they soon realize they must solve the mystery of their deaths to avert a major looming disaster. And despite the characters that I've just described to you, this is not a YA novel. Also on the 13th, from Tor, this is Projections. It's a novel by S.E. Porter. Her most well-known book is a YA fantasy called Vasa in the Night, and this is her adult debut, apparently. It's a dark fantasy set to appeal to fans of China Miéville and Jeff Vandermeer. Okay, you have my attention. That explores misogyny and the soul-corrupting power of unrequited love through an enchanted lens of violence and revenge. Oh boy. As a young woman seeks vengeance on the obsessed sorcerer who murdered her because he could not have her, her murderer sends projections of himself out into the world to seek out and seduce women who will return the love she denied or suffer mortal consequence. A lush gothic journey across worlds full of strange characters and even stranger magic. Also, on the 13th, from Angry Robot Books, this one looks really fascinating. Once again, repeating that sort of China Miéville vibe. This is Gog Magog. It's a team-up by Jeff Noon and Steph Beard, both highly respected, award-nominated, award-winning authors. And this is the first book in an adventurous duology, perfect for fans also of Mervyn Peake. Now that got my attention. Katie Maud is a veteran taxi pilot and spectral navigator on the River Nisus, who is drawn out of her drunken retirement to transport 2 mysterious passengers, a very sick young girl and an artificial being with a crystal skull, down the river, a journey which may end up being Katie's last. So, yeah, I'm all about weird odysseys, so looking forward to Gog Magog. And finally, on the 13th, The Warm Hands of Ghosts is a new book by Catherine Arden, the author of The Bear and the Nightingale, that trilogy. She's returning with this hauntingly beautiful historical fantasy set during the Great War, in which Laura, a combat nurse, searches for her brother Freddie, believed dead in the trenches, despite eerie signs that suggest otherwise. Laura hears whispers about haunted trenches and a strange hotelier whose wine gives soldiers the gift of oblivion. Could Freddie have escaped the battlefield only to fall prey to someone or something else? On the 13th, so that is a wallet-busting day, be ready for it. Now, on the 20th, 2 more books, starting with Island Witch. The author here is Amanda Jayatissa. This one is set in 19th century Sri Lanka, inspired by local folklore. The daughter of a traditional demon priest, relentlessly bullied by peers and accused of witchcraft herself, tries to solve the mysterious attacks that have been terrorizing her coastal village. And next up on the 20th, we have Son of Blood and Ruin. The author is Marielle Lares. And yeah, I know this one has one of those noun of noun and noun titles that I, kind of roll my eyes at because it's such a cliche. But this one is not only not YA, it has a pretty intriguing premise. Listen to this. Rumor has it, on the streets of 16th century New Spain, there's a new vigilante in town serving justice. This reimagining of Zorro, featuring a heroic warrior sorceress, weaves Mesoamerican mythology and Mexican history 2 decades after the Spanish conquest into a swashbuckling historical debut fantasy with magic, intrigue, treachery, and romance. So there you see. It sounds a lot more interesting than you might expect from the title. Did I say 2 books on the 20th? I'm sorry, I lied. It's 3. And the third one is River Mama. The author is Zalika Reed Benta. This comes out from Erewhon Press, and it's a contemporary magical realist fantasy about a young black woman who navigates her quarter-life crisis while embarking on a mythical quest on behalf of the Jamaican water deity, River Mama, through the streets of Toronto. It's a vibrant exploration of diasporic community and ancestral ties, and an homage to Jamaican storytelling by an invigorating voice. So that could be a lot of fun. River Mama on the 20th of February. And the final February release, this was a very crowded month for fantasy, comes out on the 27th, and it is another new book by Premi Mohammed. This one comes out from Tor.com. The Butcher of the Forest. And here's what it's all about. At the northern edge of a land ruled by a merciless foreign tyrant lies a wild, forbidden forest ruled by powerful magic. Varys Thorn, the only one to ever enter the forest and survive, is forced to go back inside to retrieve the tyrant's missing children. Inside await traps and trickery, ancient monsters and hauntings of the past. One day is all Varys gets. One misstep will cost everything. That's The Butcher of the Forest on February 27th. Now, moving ahead into March. If you're a fantasy fan, this is a slightly less crowded month, at least, concerning stuff that I picked. On the 5th, we get The Truth of the Eleke by Moses Osei Utomi. Now, this is his second Forever Desert novella from Tor.com Publishing, taking place 500 years after the lies of the Ujungo. As 17-year-old Osi, a junior peacekeeper in the city, is tasked with destroying the cult of Tutu and bringing back the sacred god's eyes that they have stolen. Moving on now to the 19th of March. Here's a new book by Lucy Holland, the acclaimed author of Sister Song. This one is Song of the Huntress, and it transforms the story of Herla and the Wild Hunt into a rich feminist fantasy set in Britain in the year 60 CE. In this stunning tale of two great warriors, a war-torn land, and an ancient magic that is slowly awakening. So, for all you historical fantasy fans, that one could be a real treat. April starts off on the 2nd with Someone You Can Build a Nest In. This is by John Wiswell. It's his debut novel. He's a Locus and Nebula award-winning author. Now, this one is the story of a shape-shifting monster named Shishi Shen, who falls in love with the human huntress, Homily, who rescues her. But when Homily reveals she is hunting a shapeshifter that cursed her family, Shishi Shen must figure out how to conceal her true identity while unearthing the truth about a curse she knows she never made. On the 9th, from Angry Robot, we get The Last Phi Hunter by Salini Goldenberg. Now, in this mythic dark fantasy, rich with Thai culture, Buddhism, and martial arts, ambitious Phi hunter and perpetual lone wolf, X, finds his road to glory interrupted when a heavily pregnant runaway enlists his help to escort her through the dangerous, spirit-filled forest, where ghosts salivate over the scent of the unborn. And on the 9th, also, this one is by Greg Keyes. It's from Titan Books. It's called The Wind That Sweeps the Stars. Greg Keyes is the author of the Basilisk Throne and the Kingdoms of Thorn and Bone saga, which I think came out in the 2000s. It's a taut high fantasy in which an assassin must destroy an empire from within, eliminating wizards, their demons, and even the emperor. For the lives, for the very souls of her people, she must succeed within a single day, or her homeland will be destroyed. A lot of people in these books getting really tight deadlines to do things. Doesn't seem fair. Oh well. So, if you want more assassins, we get more on the 23rd of April. This is The Dead Cat Tail Assassins, the new book by P. J. Lee Clark, the Nebula Award-winning author of A Master of Jinn. And this book introduces a brand new world and a fantastical city full of gods and assassins. Aveen the Eviscerator, which is a really on-the-nose name for an assassin. Anyway, Aveen is a skilled, discreet, professional killer whose newest mission brings her face-to-face with a past she isn't supposed to remember and a vow she can't forget. Moving on into May now. The 7th, we get 2 books, starting with Red Side Story by Jasper Fforde. Jasper Fforde returns with the long-awaited sequel to his dystopian novel Shades of Grey, set in an alternative future England called Chromatica, where social class is determined by a person's ability to perceive color. Now, in Red Side Story, the original protagonists, Eddie Russell and Jane G23, must negotiate the delicate chromatic politics of society to find out how society got to be this way, and is there somewhere else beyond their borders. And I feel like this is probably leaning a bit, I know it sounds, because of the setting, more science fictional, but I think it leans a bit towards, medieval style, fantasy. So, with some satire as well. So looking forward to that anyway. And also, on the 7th, The Silver Blood Promise by James Logan. Now, if traditional high fantasy with a dash of humor is what you're after, then this fast-paced epic fantasy debut, set in a city of traitors and thieves, monsters and murderers, is a must-read for fans of Joe Abercrombie, Nicholas Eames, and Scott Lynch. In this one, the disgraced heir of an ancient noble house finds new purpose when he learns his estranged father has been murdered under mysterious circumstances. Well, they usually are mysterious, but this one is, like, apparently mysterious enough to get him involved again. Now, on May the 14th, here's one that I'm very happy to see. It's a new book by Peter S. Beagle called I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons, and this is out from Saga Press. Whimsical-looking little book. Now, Peter S. Beagle, of course, is the legendary fantasy author who wrote The Last Unicorn and many other great novels over the years. Never a very prolific writer, but, always really good, when he releases something. But the reason I'm really glad to see this is that the last, I think like the 2000s especially, 2000s maybe into the early teens, his life was really on a tragic turn. He had a manager, a guy I actually met at one point at a con about 18, 19 years ago, who just turned out to be a complete SOB. I think Peter sued him, I believe, for elder abuse. I mean, just like a horrible situation with this guy. But anyway, I believe that got resolved, and now Peter's writing again. But this is a new book with equal amounts of power and whimsy, in which a lovable cast of characters trapped within their roles of dragon hunter, princess, and more must come together to take their fates into their own hands. Now, and like The Last Unicorn, this one sounds like it is a return to the sort of metafictional humor. So he's going to play very openly with fantasy tropes here. Finally, in May, on the 21st, we get the new book by Vaishnavi Patel, the author of Kaikeyi, a debut novel from last year, and this one is The Goddess of the River, and it is a powerful reimagining of the story of Ganga, goddess of the river, and her doomed mortal son. Ganga, joyful goddess of the river, serves as a caretaker to the mischievous godlings who roam her banks, but when their antics incur the wrath of a powerful sage, Ganga is cursed to become mortal, bound to her human form until she fulfills the obligations of the curse. Now, moving on to June. This is The Afterlife of Mal Caldera. The author is Nadi Reed Perez. This comes out from Titan. And in this one, the ghost of a rock star tries to make contact with her sister Chris, left behind with her estranged Catholic family. She manages to enlist the help of reluctant local medium Ren, and together they concoct a plan to pass on a message to Chris. Now, this does look like another variant on the theme of needing to let go and move on, but this one is told from the POV of the dead rather than, those who have survived and are mourning them. So, on June the 18th, Tor releases Daughter of Calamity by Rosalie M. Lin. And this is a dark and atmospheric reimagining of 1930s Shanghai for fans of Niveau, Fondeli, and S.A. Chakraborty, it says. Our heroine is Jingwen, a showgirl at a high-end nightclub who is forced to delve into the city's underworld when a series of crimes targeting her fellow showgirls, whose stolen faces are appearing on wealthy foreign socialites, reveals to her that Shanghai's glittering mirage of carefree luxury comes at a terrible price. 2 books on the 25th of June, starting with The Daughter's War by Christopher Buehlman. Now, in this prequel to The Black-Tongued Thief, the Raven Knights march towards a once beautiful city overrun by the Goblin Horde, accompanied by scores of giant war corvids. Made with the darkest magic, these fearsome black birds may hold the key to stopping the goblins in their war to make cattle of mankind. Okay, well, give me a book with giant fucking crows killing everybody, and I'm sure I will be there. Awesome. Next on the 25th, this book is a fast-paced fantasy debut rooted in Slavic folklore. It's called Foul Days. The author is Genevieve Dimova, and it's described as The Witcher meets Naomi Novik. Okay, and I'm trying to kind of meld those two things in my head. Not having good luck, so I'll just read the thing. Kasara, a witch in the walled city of Chernograd, must trade her shadow, the source of her powers, for illegal passage across the wall to Belgrade when she learns she's being pursued by her ex, the Zemay, known as the Tsar of Monsters. But when Kasar develops a fast-acting version of the deadly wasting sickness that stalks shadowless witches, she must team up with a detective to recover her shadow and her magic. We are now moving into July, and this is another very busy month if you're a fantasy fan. Starting on the 2nd with The Gilded Crown by Marianne Gordon. This debut novel is about a woman named Helivir who can bring people back from the dead, but always at an increasing cost to herself. When the Queen orders Helivir to revive the assassinated Princess Sulivain, sole heir to the throne, then stay by her side in the event of further attempts that could plunge the country into a civil war, Helivir must trade more and more of herself to keep the princess alive. But death will always take what he is owed. Now on the 9th of July, this one comes in from Saga Press. It's The Price of Redemption. The author is Sean Carpenter, and it's a debut female-led swashbuckling fantasy following powerful sorceress and sea captain Marquesa Enid de Tancarville, as she is forced to flee her homeland to escape death at the hands of the theocratic revolution. She meets a vast array of characters perfect for fans of Patrick O'Brian's beloved Master and Commander series. So, looking for high seas fantasy, The Price of Redemption might be your ticket. Now also on the 9th, this is a book called The Deathless Shores. It's from Angry Robot Books. The author is P.H. Lowe. And it says, gorgeous and devastating, P.H. Lowe's debut fantasy is a richly reimagined tale of Captain Hook's origin, a story of cruelty, magic, lost innocence, and the indelible power of stories. On the 16th of July, Tor releases The West Passage. The author is Jared Pachacek, I think. And in it, a palace the size of a city ruled by giant ladies of unknowable eldritch origin. Okay, I'm getting really Lady Domitresque vibes here, all right? Anyway, it says, a land left to slow decay, drowning in the debris of generations. All this and more awaits you within the West Passage, a delightfully mysterious and intriguingly weird medieval fantasy, unlike anything you've read before. Well, weird is usually good enough, but intriguingly weird, okay, I'm on board. Now, July 23rd, get your wallets ready, because this is a crowded day. Starting with a book called The Dissonance by Sean Hamill, the author of A Cosmology of Monsters, returns with this epic contemporary fantasy, a mixture of The Magicians and Stephen King's It. A story of dark magic, terrible mistakes, and second chances. 3 magicians living in Texas who trained as children in a magic discipline called the Dissonance, which harnesses negative emotions, are brought together 20 years after an incident that shattered their coven, when a teen unwittingly summons a murderous entity while performing a cemetery seance. And also on the 23rd, this is The Haunting of Hecate Cavendish by Paula Braxton, New York Times bestselling author, who returns with a new magic-infused series set in 1881 England about Hecate Cavendish, an eccentric and feisty young woman, is there any other kind, who can see ghosts. Hecate works in an ancient chained library located inside a cathedral haunted by lost souls, a library full of wisdom guarded for centuries, mysteries, and stories locked into its worn, humble shelves, which honestly sounds like the ultimate dream job to me, really. Also on the 23rd, this is from Tor. It's called In the Shadow of the Fall. The author is Toby Ogundaran, I believe. African fantasy is with us once again. A cosmic war reignites, and the fate of the Orisha lie in the hands of an untried acolyte in this first entry of a new epic fantasy novella duology by Toby Ogundaran for fans of N.K. Jemisin and Suyi Davies Okongbwa. And finally on the 23rd, this one looks really fascinating for fans of literary fantasy. It's 100 Shadows by Hwang Jung-yun, and it is the English language translation by Jung Yi-won of an internationally best-selling South Korean novella. In a slum in Seoul, marked for demolition, residents' shadows have begun to rise. No one knows how or why, but they warn each other, do not follow your shadow if it wanders away. Electronics repair shop employees Youngyo and Mujai can only watch as their community begins to fade. Their growing connection with one another provides solace, but it may not be enough against an uncaring ruling class and the inevitability of the rising shadows. Now, the impression I get is that this is all social commentary about the loss of old communities in the wake of, gentrification and economic displacement. But in any event, international fantasy and translation, I'm here for it. Getting close to the end of the list here, 2 books on August the 20th, the first of which is Asunder. New book by Kirsten Hall, author of The Border Keeper and The Star Eater, returns with this novel about Karis Eska, a death speaker, locked into an irrevocable compact with Sebaster, a terrifying eldritch being, three-faced, 100-winged, unforgiving. I imagine I also would be unforgiving if I had 3 faces and 100 wings. Who has granted her the ability to communicate with the newly departed. When a job goes sideways and connects her to a dying stranger with some very dangerous secrets, her entire world is upended. And also, on the 20th of August, the ever-popular T. Kingfisher is back with A Sorceress Comes to Call. And this is a dark retelling of the Brothers Grimm tale about the Goose Girl, rife with secrets, murder, and forbidden magic. Closing in on the end of the list, on October the 8th, we have A Dark and Subtle Light. The author here is Mark Hodder. This is a thrilling sci-fantasy alternate history adventure that opens a new series, Machiavelli the Immortal, from the Philip K. Dick award-winning author of the Burton and Swinburne series, which has got to be the single most bonkers steampunk fantasy series I've ever encountered. Anyway, this one stars Machiavelli, yes, that Machiavelli, as an immortal diplomat who must protect the Earth from a malevolent alien intelligence with a vampiric lust for sensation and misery. So we get a real historical character like in the Burton and Swinburne series, where there was the adventurer, the explorer Richard Burton. And last but not least, on October the 22nd, from Angry Robot, we get The Last Shield. This is a new book by Cameron Johnston, author of the Maleficent Seven and the Age of Tyranny duology. And this one is, are you ready? A gender-flipped diehard set in a mysterious castle. Perfect for fans of John Gwynne and Mark Lawrence. Briar is the commander of the Shields, protectors of the forest realm of Sunweald, who must single-handedly, I presume, defend the ancient corridors and secret tunnels of the Sunweald Palace from a gang of brigands determined to steal magical artifacts from deep within the Wyrm Vault. Okay, so this one sounds like it's going to be pure and utter carnage. At least it better be, because I'm ready. But that's The Last Shield on October the 22nd from Cameron Johnston. And there you have it. Feels like I got through that list a lot more quickly than I did the previous 2 videos. But those are the anticipated fantasy novels for 2024 that I've listed. Which ones are you most looking forward to, and which fantasy novels that are not on my list are you also looking forward to next year? And as I usually tell everybody, there are, sequels, middle books and trilogies, things like that, that I don't usually include in my anticipated lists because I like to try to, boost stuff that is new, standalone stuff, what have you. But let me know in those comments. Light them up, okay? Also, if you enjoyed watching, please hit that like button, share the video far and wide with all of your SFF reading friends, and above all, please subscribe if you've not done so. That is how the channel grows. You can also support the channel at my TeePublic store and at my Patreon, where recruits into Wink's Army get little perks occasionally, like early access to some of my videos, but mostly by contributing to the Patreon, $2 a month, you are helping me to pay Matt Olson, my amazingly gifted, wonderful channel artist who does all of my fantastic thumbnails and things for me. And yes, I pay him because that is how you treat an artist. You respect them for their professionalism. So if you are doing that, thank you so much for that added support. Greatly appreciated. I want to thank all the rest of you wonderful folks for being the very best viewers on all of BookTube. Don't forget, this coming Thursday night, my live reading hangout, my stream. So come and grab the book you're reading right now and join me for about an hour and a half, 2 hours on Thursday night. And until I see all of you next time, stay safe, stay healthy. Not very good with the snaps tonight. I'm sorry. Wait. Whatever. Anyway, happy reading.